Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Over Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, there was an extraordinary scene yesterday. The King of Jordan arrived in Washington, and King Abdallah and President Trump were in the Oval Office and fielding questions from reporters who were naturally curious about Trump's plan to remove 2 million Palestinians from Gaza and turn it
And
into
the
a.
same media that doesn't want Trump to have a win. That's why they keep pressing him. They keep
They're
pressing.
pressing him, but those are reasonable questions. I mean, you've come up with a bizarre plan. Um, how are you going to implement it? And of course, since the King of Jordan has explicitly, unequivocally declared that he's not going to facilitate the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, it was naturally incumbent on the media to ask, well, what happens if the King of Jordan is not going to take them? And the King of Jordan, of course, a very experienced diplomat, um, fielded these questions with amazing dexterity, both flattering President Trump as a peacemaker, and talking about vague plans in the future and talks and negotiations. It was an extraordinary performance. One has to say, though, that subsequently the King of Jordan sent out a series of tweets making clear that in no way, shape, or form will Jordan take part in the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. But Trump, nevertheless, continued with his talk about removing the Palestinians and turning Gaza into into this wonderful Mediterranean hotel, beach resort, and so on.
Do you
Um,
see how his eyes, how animated he
yes,
becomes when
yeah, yeah,
he
that's right. And it's an amazing thing. I mean, you can talk nonsense, and as long as you can just keep talking nonsense, it has a certain bizarre logic of its own. Because I mean, he says the same thing. People were asking him questions. Hey, where do you get off owning Gaza? Are you going to pay for it? They said, no, 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 we're not going to pay for it. Well, where do you move these the 2 million Palestinians? Oh well, we got lots of places. They got a lot of countries are very eager and ready to. They'll have beautiful homes. All of them will get these wonderful, beautiful tree-lined streets. First-rate schools, best ever medical care, and so on. And so it's
why can't Americans have that? Anyway, sorry.
yeah, well, that's the thing. And again, I mean, the most obvious question would be, well, okay, how many is America going to take? I mean, if you're ready to you're parceling them out, these Palestinians out, like a puppy litter. You've got 12 puppies, then you've got to find homes for 12 puppies. So you say, well, he's going to take one, and then he's going to take one, and then he's going to take two. That's how he's playing. All these different countries are going to take Palestinians, Albania, Indonesia.
I wonder how ICE in America would take that.
So,
You remember George, FDR, he was under enormous amount of pressure to take Europe's Jews, and he still didn't
no,
because
no.
immigration was the third rail.
Immigration was there were very strict immigration laws in the United States since the 1920s, um, and so and then obviously he ruled out. Well, I think he's been asked before. Well, we're so far away from the Middle East. I mean, that would be a real stretch to move them there. Though I don't know why Indonesia would be somehow more more convenient
Well,
to
I'll
move
tell
them.
you, maybe for Palestinians it's far away, but for just about any other aspiring immigrant, they can make it to America. Okay, I mean, considering what the Palestinians have been through, getting to America would be a walk in the park, considering
Right,
what
right.
they've been through.
Yeah, that's right. But of course, there's also the question, which of course nobody asks, but which would certainly be relevant here, is well, why can't we just pick up 9 million Israelis and just dump them somewhere. I mean, after all, they're the intruder. I mean, they were the ones who came to this part of the world. They weren't invited. They came there. They decided to make their home here. They decided to create a state here. Almost from the beginning, they are, aroused enormous opposition. Their presence was irksome from the beginning. Why not just solve the problems of the Middle East in one swoop and just pick up 9 million? It's not that many. I mean, after all, Trump was saying that 2 million isn't really that many. So, 9 million isn't that many. Just pick them up and take them somewhere else. But of course, that doesn't come up in the
Well,
discussion.
and there's always the creating a viable state for the Palestinians, then everybody is a winner. But we've been down that path for like 40 years, okay?
Right.
And that's not going to happen. You're right, George. I mean, I think all of us, it was Tuesday of last week when Trump made his blockbuster announcement. And I think in the heart of hearts of a lot of us, we just kind of like, well, anyway, and then he would just kind of move on. This is this is weird. This is just simply weird. He's doubling down more and more. Well, who are you going to buy it from? Who's going to sell it to us? Okay. And obviously, these questions are unanswerable because it's working in a reality that doesn't exist. Okay. So and the Palestinians would be permanently displaced. But if you're going to create such a beautiful beachfront utopia, well, I would want to live there. I
Well,
mean,
that's the thing.
I
Yeah.
mean, the Palestinians obviously want to go back if it's going to be like that.
Right, but they
It
won't
doesn't
be
make
allowed to go
any
back
sense.
because of course they were not going to be able to afford it. I mean, if you're creating this essentially, what Trump does is create luxury apartments, luxury beachfront property, luxury resorts, luxury casinos, luxury hotels. The Palestinians, they won't be able to afford it. Sorry, the bills are too high. Incidentally, that was the way Trump got around the problems that his father had, because his father built this middle class housing, and of course, as soon as he built that, the Justice Department went after him and said, "Hey, you're a racist. You're not allowing blacks to move into this middle class housing." And he wasn't. I mean, he wanted nice housing. The people who lived there, they didn't particularly want blacks living there. And Trump kind of got around it by giving up on the middle class housing idea and just created luxury property. And once you have luxury property, then the Justice Department can't come after you because, well, of course, we don't have blacks. I mean, they can't afford it. I mean, if they had the money, we'd be more than happy to accommodate them. So that's going to be this. Well, sorry, you can't come back. You can't afford to live here. But then where does Israel come into this? I mean, is it going to turn this over to Israel? Israel is going to be in control of this luxury, resort in the Mediterranean.
Well, obviously, I mean, as ludicrous as this idea is, but that is the logical conclusion, is that for reasons that we might understand one day, the United States had, you're going to get contractors. Okay, so first of all, you got to move the people. Who's going to do that? How are you going to do that? Where are these people going to go? There are no takers, zero takers, okay, to forcibly ethnically cleanse up to 2 million. And even the numbers are weird 1.7, 1.8. They play with these weird numbers. Um, and then 15 years to clear it out, and then another 10 years to build it up. Um, Politics is kind of very cyclical and very short cycles here. I mean, this is something, akin to the Marshall Plan for all of Europe
Right. Yes,
after the Second World
that's right.
War.
So he's got this, but then he came up with the day before with this bizarre idea, which was that, well, unless Hamas releases all hostages in its custody, then all hell is going to break loose, which was very surprising because at the same time he said that he doesn't really speak on behalf of the Israeli government, in which case what are you talking about? If you're not, what are you going to do the bombing? No, 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 no. And then how can you threaten anything if you then say, well, you're not speaking on behalf of the Israeli government, and You're not really planning on doing anything yourself. Nonetheless, we have Bibi Netanyahu, who then said, yeah, well, but he didn't quite repeat Trump's words. He said, if Hamas doesn't release hostages on Saturday,
Hostages, right.
hostages, didn't say all of the hostages, doesn't release hostages, then, all bets are off. But the fact is that Hamas is responding to the fact that Israelis are themselves not abiding by the terms of the ceasefire. But leaving that aside, if all hell does break loose, then it is on Trump. It will be on Trump, because essentially that ultimatum to Hamas is a violation of the agreement. There was an agreement. They didn't say they all have to be released on one day and that's it. It was supposed to be a step-by-step process. Gradually, they'd be releasing one after another. Then we get on to stage 2, negotiations about a stage 2, and then eventually onto a stage 3. So if he comes up with this ultimatum completely in violation of this agreement, then if the fighting resumes, it's on him, absolutely on him. He's not going to be able to worm himself out of that. It'll be his responsibility that the resumption of the fighting.
And when Steve Witkoff went to knock down the door on the Sabbath, demanding to talk to the Prime Minister Netanyahu, um, it evolved from a truce that was negotiated by delegates from Israel in Doha and Hamas. As soon as Witkoff knocked on the door, it was Trump's truce. And now Trump is breaking his own truce. Okay. And all of the hostages, and I thought about that this afternoon, the difference between the hostages and all the hostages. And I'm just going to bounce this off you, George. Elise Stefanik, when she was being confirmed, I want our hostages to come home, all the hostages. Okay. That is something that is kind of imprinted on Trump's circle, as if that the release of all hostages somehow changes the dynamics. And maybe for them it does, because they can take that as a win. Okay. Right. Trump wants a win. I freed the hostages. What happens after that? Well, that's what Israel does. That's Israel's decision. Right. It seems to me it's a way, because I think Trump is beginning to realize is that this is going to stick with him over and over and over and over again. It's not going to end, because when all hell breaks loose, it's Trump's war. He abdicated from his own responsibility to a truce that he put his name on, and gleefully for 2 weeks or so, I did that. I got this done. Okay, he wants a win. It was a win. You and both of us gave him yeah, okay. I mean, a truce is better than considering continuing the genocide. Okay, I'm sign me up. Okay,
right.
I think we all felt that way. Right. But so this is a self-own on a magnitude that I've never seen before from an American president.
Well, it really is, because first of all, by making this demand, you're essentially blowing up this very agreement, because there's nothing in this agreement saying they all have to be released on such and such a date. There was not. It was supposed to be through this 42 days. Then there was during those 42 days, there was supposed to be negotiations about a phase 2. And even then, it wasn't about all of the hostages. No one said all of the hostages have to be released during phase 1. So you're violating the very agreement that you've been taking credit for having affected. And the good feeling that he has enjoyed, I think in large part derives from this ceasefire. I mean, everybody's happy with it, with this, obviously, with a ceasefire. It isn't really a ceasefire. People are getting killed, but it's nothing on the scale that there was before. So he's basking in this in his popularity, and now he's trying to undermine it. And then, and on top of that, he's coming up with this lunatic plan. So if he goes down this path, you could see that, he's basically blowing up his own presidency. He gets off to this strong start, and then you're just blowing it up for no reason at all, because the agreement was being implemented. I mean, the fact that they came back emaciated, well, some did, some didn't. Some of the prisoners came back in pretty good condition, and some of them said, we were treated well. They shared food with us and whatever.
And why was that? Because of Israel's bombing campaign. The captives that were brought back to Gaza, they were spread out all through the Gaza Strip. Qassam brigades were holding these. Maybe this group is holding these, and there's no food. Okay, there's no water.
Right.
Eventually, the captives themselves would be a victim of Israel's blockade of humanitarian aid. I mean, and no one eats. Okay, that's why. Okay,
Right.
and the Western media drew the worst possible conclusion. This is what the Hamas does to people. No, everybody is that way. Okay,
Right. Right.
it's really quite extraordinary. I agree with George, and I've been very public about this. There's no easier way to blow up your presidency than this, because I can remember someone sent me a couple of months ago. Unfortunately, I actually did save it on my phone, but it was a little girl with her jaw blown off, and it was just hanging from, and
Right.
that's what we're going to see over and over and over again.
Right.
Okay. And no one wants to see that. Maybe, the genocide is a popular motif for people of Israel. Okay, given public opinion polls and interviews and stuff like that. But the rest of the world finds it abhorrent.
But it's
Okay.
unlikely that this will go down very well in Israel, because if the
And
fight
it's not
does.
going to go down well, George, with MAGA. You go first, I'll go.
No, yeah, no, it won't go down well with Israel, because with the Israelis, they want their hostages back. If you resume the fighting
Done.
on Saturday,
Done.
then you haven't got the hostages back, and therefore again there'll be distress, great distress on Israel. After all this time, they've been waiting 16 months for the return of the hostages, and now, if you resume, it's almost certain that they'll never come back. I mean, because then,
Absolutely.
why sign any agreements? Why do anything? I mean, if you're going to blow it up for no reason, after a few weeks, so it's going to be very unpopular with Israel, because I think their first priority now, is the return of the hostages.
On my program yesterday, I had three guests. Margaret Kimberly is one of my favorites, but she's from the Black Agenda Report, and she's extremely left wing. On foreign policy, we have a lot of common ground. Domestic policy, very different. That's okay. But then the other two guests are MAGA guys. And George, as I foresaw, one MAGA guy is that Trump knows what he's doing. The other MAGA guy said, this is genocide. This is what Trump is signing us up for. I'm seeing it happen. Okay. Now, obviously, people that want to be on a chat show, a talk show, they're going to have motivation to defend their views and all that. That doesn't mean, hardly means that that is a outright indication of like a 50-50 split. I don't know. Okay. But it is embedded in the movement. This is something. Biden was awful. It was Biden's genocide. It was easy to do that. That didn't take much work. Okay, and it was a cudgel against Kamala Harris. Well, now we're in a different world right now, so that is beginning to percolate and come to the surface. And I think that I personally think, this is my own personal opinion, is you can't bridge the divide. You just can't say, well, it's just too bad. You can do that with like steel tariffs. 25 was too much. Should have been 17, okay? But this you can't.
Right. I
You have
think the
to
problem is
decide.
also that, I think Trump may well just have an undeserved reputation for being the great deal maker, because,
Well, I obviously.
but yeah, because again, if you go back to the first term, he walked away from the Iran nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, for no reason. The deal was working. I mean, everything was being done. I mean, Iran had stopped enriching uranium. What enriched uranium it had handed over to Russia. So it was complying with the agreement. The sanctions had been lifted, and then Trump walked away from it. And then he claims, oh well, we would have had a great agreement. But what agreement? You never had an agreement. You tore up what agreement was in
Oh,
place,
George,
but you never replaced it with anything.
the art of the deal, how was it expressed during Trump's first term? How? And don't tell me the Abraham Accords. I'm sorry, that doesn't qualify for me.
Right.
What? None.
No,
None.
exactly. Ex-
None.
Exactly, and this is so. This is just a part of a pattern that Trump somehow he tears up an agreement and says, "Oh well, that's great. We're going to replace it with a better agreement." Well, why would you do that? I mean, there's no basis for believing that you will replace this with a better agreement. If this is torn up and then the fighting resumes, there's not going to be any more these agreements because then why would Hamas sign on to this?
Well, George, it has a knock-on effect. Going back to our first video today, um, you know, the Iran nuclear deal, he walked away from it. It was a good deal. We all wanted it to go to the next step.
Right,
That's what the deal was about, is to go to the next step. Okay, normalization of relations and things like this. But the Russians are watching this. The Chinese are watching this. And so Trump wants to make a deal with us.
right,
Why? What,
right,
you know, I mean, every politician plays to the domestic audience. That's the
right,
nature of politics here. But, you know, these things are existential. I mean, China is being designated as enemy number one. How can we make a deal with them if the Chinese thinking with the Americans when they don't even keep their own
right,
agreements? Yeah.
right,
And then, of course, if you dig a little bit deeper, as we always do here, well, the Minsk process, you walked away from that too.
right. But that
Okay.
was before. That was before.
Yeah, but what I'm just saying,
Under
there's
Trump as well. Under
no,
Trump.
no, but no, no, no. This is an
You're right. You're absolutely right.
American foreign policy. Okay,
Right.
continuity,
Yeah. No.
and
No. No
Trump
question.
is just this continuity is just in your face with Trump,
That's
with everything Trump does. Okay,
that's
it's in
right.
your face.
And it's very important, and we should emphasize this, which isn't emphasized enough, that when it comes to Ukraine, Trump played a significant role in the escalation of the conflict in Ukraine. And he played a significant part. I mean, not as significant as Biden's, but he played a significant role. And he to this day, he's proud of having gone somewhere where Obama hadn't gone. Obama hadn't sent lethal weapons to Ukraine. Obama said, I think this makes no sense for us to get involved in a conflict that the Russians regard as existential, but we don't. He said, "Oh well, we're going to send them lethal weapons," and he was that was the catalyst for everything because then you basically he sends lethal weapons, and if you send these, you can send others, and essentially Russians were watching this and they took this very very seriously.
And why did Trump do this, everyone? Because Trump was being Russiagated.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See how we called this from the get-go. I remember back in November of 2016, this is going to bleed into policy, okay? And it has on steroids, okay?
Okay.
I don't know, George. I mean, this is I mentioned earlier that I met up with Alistair Crook, and I asked him about Trump's gambit and all this. He has this theory of the case. I wasn't absolutely convinced, but it was really kind of interesting. I don't want to go into it. He can say it for himself. But looking at the reactions across in our lane, as it were, really varied. I think it's really. I've never come across anything quite like this. Okay. Usually it's just kind of nuanced differences, or someone will mention something. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't thought about that moment in this debate, okay,
Right.
at all.
Right. Well, this is the problem that to the extent that there are people who are defending Trump and saying, well, the other plans haven't worked, and you say, well, all these different things that have been tried in the Middle East, well, they haven't worked. Well, okay, they haven't worked, but that doesn't mean a really crazy idea will work. And the point is that any bloody fool can come up with a stupid idea but which has no hope of getting implemented, but is actually going to make everything worse. I mean, that any idiot can say, "Hey, I've got this great idea, to solve the problem. Which is actually going to make everything 10 times worse." I mean, the art of negotiation, or the art of diplomacy, should be come up with an idea that is doable, that is implementable, that you can get a number of parties to agree upon. That's the trick. I mean, oh yeah, great. Well, let's move out the 2 million Palestinians. What a fantastic idea! No one's ever thought of that. Let's do it. It's idiotic. I mean, we don't even need to list all the different ways in which it's idiotic. And I guess because there is no hope of getting implemented, Trump thinks that, well, okay, we'll be on to something else, and then he'll forget. If, however, this ceasefire breaks down and the fighting resumes, it'll be Trump's. And Trump will not be able to worm his way out of that.
No, I mean, if Saturday is the benchmark, and it looks like it is, I mean, even Haaretz is reporting this is, the nominally liberal news outlet of Israel, and I read it, George reads it. I mean, it gives you an insight of the thinking. I mean, they're openly saying Netanyahu definitely wants to sabotage this. I mean, and he's happy that Trump has taken this path, which Netanyahu is just far more nuanced. Hostages, not all the hostages. See, who took on the risk?
Right,
Trump.
right.
Netanyahu took no risk. No risk. Echoing the president of the United States taking no risk. Okay.
Right.
That's exactly the way Netanyahu likes it. Okay.
Again,
And to echo George's point, once the genocide goes back full blast, no one's going to remember the nonsense he had to say. Okay. Because we're going to be focused, obviously, on something else.
right. Exactly. And that's, of course, the way Trump does it, because every single day is something, in other dramatic day in Trump land, there's always dramatic events. I mean, his executive orders, I don't know how many of them are now being challenged in the court. So that's always very exciting, what's going on in the court. Then you've got all the confirmation hearings. That's all. And this is going to go on, day after day of this. Yesterday we had Elon Musk giving a presentation in the Oval Office. I mean, no one's ever seen anything like this. The president just sitting there and Elon Musk is just giving a presentation.
With a little toddler on his shoulder.
Exactly.
And he didn't even take his hat off. Did you know
No, he didn't even.
That was weird.
That was very, very weird. But everything, his whole attire was weird.
It looked like he came off the Oklahoma ranch or something.
Yeah, exactly. This is, Oval Office. Everyone sits there with suit and tie, pocket square, tie pin and everything. And he's just sitting there. You go, I don't know what he was wearing. I mean, some kind of a strange overcoat and then a hat on and this child on his shoulders, and then giving some presentation. No one could quite follow what the presentation was about, other than the disclosure, which is very interesting, that Samantha Power, the former head of the USAID, is worth 30 million. And saying, how the hell did she get to be worth $30 million? She started off worth 6 million. Then during the years of the USAID, she became worth 30 million. And that's a very interesting question.
Yeah, I guess suppose that she was her own favorite charity. Okay, yeah, she was aiding herself. Okay, oh no, she's developing herself, because there's no aid in USAID everywhere.
No, there isn't. It is actually quite stunning. I had no idea she was worth that amount of money.
Well, I don't know. Just again, one of those things that just kind of warms you up in the cold breeze outside. It's like, well, at least maybe she'll have some kind of reckoning. Now, she probably won't, but she's been embarrassed and shamed. But these people take care of themselves. She'll be at Harvard.
She'll be all right. Yeah, she'll be all right. But I think we do need to find out exactly how she got to be so wealthy. I mean, she was she was a university professor, make work kind of professorship at Harvard. But how do you get from being worth 6 million, and even that is stunning, how she was worth 6 million in 2021, to 30 million now? That is a very, very interesting. I mean, because again, whatever her salary is, again, ridiculously overpaid. That doesn't get you to.
Well, it makes you. I can remember when Biden was putting together his team, and her name popped up in our podcast. And I just thought, well, she was former ambassador to the United Nations. She sat on boards, did the talking tours, $500,000 there, $250,000 there. Yeah. That's the usual thing. And then she goes back to USAID, which I thought, well, why did you just enjoy, the sunset of your career? Well,
right.
Maybe there was another reason why she joined.
Right.
Hint, hint, everyone. Hint, hint.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is a whole can of worms, how the USAID has been operating. How, this is obviously a money laundering scheme, bankrolling Democrats. And that I think is really fascinating, just, finding out how exactly all this was worked.
type in Samantha Power, and then type in Rand Paul. Watch it on video on YouTube, and you see how she stonewalls him over and over and over again.
Right.
I want to see someone get there. I want them to face consequences, okay? Because she was lying through her teeth, and she
Yes.
thought you could get away because I'm protected. I have friends, okay? And I mean, it was obnoxious. She was obnoxious what her behavior.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely obnoxious. That is a great that's a great video. I mean, she was absolutely stonewalling him. And so we've been compliant, we've compliant. No, you haven't. And so, well, this committee, we were compliant with that. I'm
No,
on
she was
that
like,
committee.
George, it was like she was taking the fifth over because she kept repeating everything she
That's
said.
right. Yeah,
Remember, she had her little, 3 or 4 lines, and it
right.
was like taking the Fifth Amendment. It said, "Oh, we have always been working with the Senate. We've passed on all documents that you request." And
Right.
then he, say, "No, you haven't." He said, "Oh, but we work very carefully with the Senate," and over and over again. You could tell
That's right.
that.
And then because she said, well, with that this committee, she because she listed some other committee, and he said, I'm on that committee, and I know you haven't complied with that. So, she was trying to defend it. Well, maybe not this committee, but another committee. No, no, I'm on that committee as well. You weren't compliant. So it's a great, great
All right,
video.
everybody, I've hit a hard break here.
Okay.
This is the Goggle with Peter and George. We're on local, so please go to thegoggle.locals.com. Today is Wednesday. That means tomorrow George has a live stream.
Exactly. 3 p.m. Eastern time. Please join me. And then think about these dogs. I mean, they're getting really, really, very bad now. And we don't know how long we can deal with them. I mean, just the old leash isn't doing the job. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.